two guys copped to please Caroline Ellison and Gary
they flipped
Wang.
like pancakes.
They flipped, but it turns out that they actually did engineer a backdoor into FTX, and Alameda has been doing this
Wang
for years.
wrote it.
Interesting defense strategy that we were discussing in the chat.
Oh, yeah.
That apparently, I think this is actually a fascinating defense strategy. I think this is their only shot. One of our besties had this theory that he was
Hey, the biggest losers in business. We made predictions last year. I said in 2020, I predicted in 2021, the biggest loser in 2022 would be crypto. By the way, Friedberg, you agreed with me, and we nailed it.
Chamath, you agreed with me.
Well,
Jacob.
yes, that's correct. We were in agreement. How about that?
We were in agreement.
We were in agreement.
SACKS, independent. Yeah.
You said, and Chamath, Visa/MasterCard, we'll get into that. And SACKS, you said asset classes benefiting from government pumps. Very interesting. The Fed stopping QE. Interesting. Anybody have comments on their predictions or each other's predictions from last year?
On a percentage basis, David absolutely nailed it. SACKS absolutely nailed it. On a dollar basis, the biggest business loser of this year was big tech. And I think that you saw three things happen, which I think are important for the future. The first was it was the most crowded trade, both by professional money managers as well as retail. And that fever finally broke in the second half of this year. And now going into these last few weeks, you're seeing a lot of panicked selling to cover losses and other things. So I think that number one, that happened. Number two, regulators basically said, we're going to go after these guys every single which way we can. Mm-hmm. And then number three, I think it started to change the innovation cycle where people now actually believe that they can't outspend because folks won't tolerate it. And the things that they're spending their money on seem kind of foolish. And so I think big tech is probably not discussed enough, but it was a huge loser for this year in terms of what happened to them.
2022's actual biggest business loser, Chamath says big tech. Friedberg, who is your biggest business loser for 2022?
I mean, this one's just a simple FTX. I mean, that was such a incredible revelation of the scale of the scam and the fraud and the craziness that went on. And I think what was interesting about FTX is it had implications not just for crypto and not just for kind of offshore regulatory, not just for fraud, but also for the investors. We had a whole debate about whether the press and journalists failed to kind of, appropriately investigate this guy rather than give him accolades because he said the right things, which he said he did over IM. And investors failed to do relevant amounts of due diligence or form a board and have proper governance over him because they wanted to be part of the hot new thing and everyone had capital to deploy. And I think what was interesting about the FTX failure is it wasn't just a failure due to fraud, but it revealed so many parts of kind of, call it, systemic laziness and systemic kind of blind eye and systemic bias that allowed and enabled this to happen. It was really a revealing kind of failure.
Let's say worst human being here.
Well, I think, look, given that this is supposed to be the year 2022, I mean, you got to say that.
Yes, in 2022, we all say SBF.
SBF was the winner of this, hands down.
Okay, congratulations to SBF. You are consensus worst human being.
For this year. I mean, not ever, but
for this year, only for this year.
Right.
Yeah, we all hate you equally.
Okay, who's number two?
Why do you hate him?
Why do I hate him? Because all those people lost their money. And, there's it's causing chaos. I feel terrible for all these people who lost money. That's why I hate him. Ugh, it's disgusting.
Did you see
anybody have a second most loathsome
Did you see
person?
That the two guys copped to please Caroline Ellison and Gary Wang?
They flipped like pancakes.
They flipped, but it turns out that they actually did engineer a backdoor into FTX, and Alameda has been doing this
Wang
for years.
Wrote it.
Oh my God.
That's game over.
They're getting 10 years. He's getting life. Game over.
Well, should we talk about that interesting defense strategy that we were discussing in the chat?
Oh, yeah.
That apparently, I think this is actually a fascinating defense strategy. I think this is their only shot. One of our besties had this theory that he was prescribed 2 prescription drugs. One was Adderall. What was the other one called? This was not a drug.
ESAM?
The patch.
It's a drug I wasn't familiar with. I guess it's a patch. But when you combine these two things, apparently it basically shuts down or kills the part of your brain that deals with
Inhibition.
It's
cocaine.
Yeah.
What if his defense strategy was, like only an insane person would do this, and I was acting insane because I was prescribed these drugs that had these drug conflicts, and it like killed part of my brain.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think about it,
what if every criminal on Wall Street said cocaine is my defense?
But this, you could say maybe he was legally prescribed it if you could show the prescription. By the way, I'm not saying this should get him off. We're basically workshopping what his only shot of his defense would be, right?
Well, and think about it, Sacks. He acted manic after FTX collapsed. So that mania of doing 20 Twitter spaces would be
There's
evidence.
something so insane about what he did, right? It's almost like a prescribed insanity defense. Like I was prescribed a drug combination that made me insane.
Anybody have a most loathsome company as we wrap?
The only way that you could come up with that is like you'd have
loathsome company, FTX
what if
for me.
this is his defense,
Yeah, my parents, boo-hoo.
No. He'll claim insanity, J. Cal. He'll say,
of course, yeah.
And they'll have do we think that his parents aren't going to help his defense?
At this point, this kid's got to go away for life. That's it.
You think life? Wow.
I think it's got to be life. I think it's got to be 30 plus years. I mean, it's just going to be billions of dollars. What kind of justice system do we have when people go away for 20, 30, 40 years?
How many years per billion would you sentence?
A decade per billion, at least. Yeah, I mean, you got to put it proportional. Sacks, don't you think the justice system needs to look at other people who are in jail for selling cocaine, for selling marijuana, for robbing a convenience store? They'll put somebody away for robbing a convenience store for a decade or two. What are they going to put him in jail for? Just because somebody came in with a gun and robbed a convenience store, they get 20 years? This kid's going to get off? Screw that.
Yeah, look, I think, what do you guys think the over-under is here? You think it's life?
I'll set it at 35 years.
I think 30.
I'll take the over.
I'll take 30. I think 30
is the over. I think this is Madoff level.
I said a good line then. What's yours, Friedberg?
I think this is Madoff level.
No, I agree. Over on 30. Yeah, I think
I said 35.
I think it's going to be multiple hundreds of years sentence.
I agree.
You have to have two parents that were like law professors or something.